by way of introductions, Dr. Katya Urch is a fellowship-trained sports medicine physician at the center here in Bend, with a passion for helping patients overcome injury to live an active and healthy life. She was a collegiate volleyball player and fully understands the frustration that comes out of being injured. She treats patients of all ages at the center with diverse orthopedic injuries, in particular injuries and conditions of the knee and shoulder. Colleen Moyer, by comparison, has been at the FootZone for 14 years, and she's the store manager here. As we all know, with age comes wisdom, and Colleen is easily one of the wisest members of the staff, as you can imagine. She has plenty of stories from over a decade of customers, in addition to having dealt with her own injuries and setbacks as a runner and a cyclist and a skier. Did I skip anything, Colleen?
That's good. That's good.
Okay, got it. And I would say she definitely brings her every woman perspective to this talk, so I'm really glad she let me talk her into co-hosting. So be sure to thank her at the end of this. Okay, so let's see. So I think we'll let these two ladies take it away. I'm gonna drop off your screen and Colleen and Dr. Urch will start their discussion. So thanks for being here.
Awesome, thanks Michelle. Okay, thanks you guys. Thanks for letting us be a part of your evening. Dr. Urch and I do have a few questions that I'm just gonna roll through, and then she's gonna take them and run with them, and then we're just gonna talk back and forth. So hopefully this goes smoothly. So if you're ready, we're ready. So the first one that we kind of want to talk is, as you know, for many of us, we've been active our whole entire life, and now we might suddenly be getting hurt while doing things that we used to be able to do or that used to be easy. So my thing on this right before Dr. Urch kicks off is I always had the saying that what we used to be able to do may have to change, and that's okay to have it change. And I always want to have a t-shirt that said, I used to be able to run 50 miles a week, and now I can only run 15, but it's still okay. Or we pick up a different event, and that is still okay, or we take cycling or swimming. But the big thing is why is this happening and what's going on? So.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. Colleen, you stole my punchline. That was gonna.
You can do it again. Maybe somebody missed it.
Everyone forget what you just said. Anyway, so I mean, you know, the story is, you're absolutely right, and we'll kind of, you know, get around to why that's happening. But you know, to summarize as to why is, I think the main thing is that, unfortunately for probably most people in the seminar, we reach our physiologic peak in terms of how, you know, our body function and our sort of ability to excel in, you know, physical activity at about the age of 30. So after 30, there's actually a linear decline in functional reserves of most body systems, which is in essence means that after the age of 30, our body progressively becomes less adaptable and less efficient. And that means that in general, it needs more care and attention. And so exactly for that reason, you can't really just sort of blow through and keep doing what you've always been doing, with the caveat that some people that train at a certain level, you know, elite athletes or people who, you know, really partake in sort of really extreme levels of certain sports with very regimented training schedules, can continue to train at that level late into their lives. But, you know, for most people who don't sort of partake in that kind of training, we do have to adapt. And, you know, sort of to kind of run through some of the global changes, which I'm not really going to get too into because it's a little bit beyond the scope of, you know, this talk and what I do. But basically, sort of a lot of it hinges on our reduced capability of our body to obtain, of our heart to obtain maximal obtainable heart rate, basically. So our heart basically, you know, after the age of 30, our ability to produce a higher heart rate goes down. And so because of that, our cardiac output goes down, and our ability to do, if you've heard the term VO max, to basically supply oxygen to our muscles and to our body goes down. And so, and that's not really something that you could really fight. You know, you can't really prevent it. I mean, you can fight it by staying fit and active, but you know, inevitably that's going to continue to happen. We also, due to various changes in sort of the collagen, which is a molecule that is sort of the building block for, you know, our ligaments, our tendons, our cartilage, tissues in the lungs, the elasticity in our lungs reduces. And so, you know, our lungs aren't able to expand. They're not quite as flexible as we get older. We lose strength, you know, muscles lose strength, and it really accelerates after the age of 50. And so, you know, the way that we breathe, we have muscles in our chest wall. Our diaphragm's a big muscle, and so just our ability to deliver oxygen to our bodies becomes less efficient. So that's sort of kind of like the global idea of what's happening in the body as you get older. Specifically to the musculoskeletal system, you know, there's certain things, you know, I touched on collagen. So the collagen, which is this molecule that makes up our tendons, which is sort of the attachment between the muscle and the bone, and ligaments, which attach bone to bone, and cartilage, which is, you know, really important. It's kind of like the cartilage that you see on the end of a chicken bone, and meniscus and all sorts of different cartilages. You know, the collagen basically becomes less elastic. The tissue, you know, it's more stable, so it becomes more friable. So the term I use in when I see patients in the office is think about kind of dried out Play-Doh. You know, when you have good sort of young Play-Doh, it's, you know, much more pliable, and it you know, it's easy to mold. You know, it's not like a rubber band, but you know, you kind of get the idea. And then it dries out, it becomes more friable. It's easy. It's, you know, you can pull it apart, you can break it easier. It's not as stretchy. And so that's kind of what's happening. And so because of that, you know, we lose our springiness, if you will. We lose flexibility. The joints become stiffer, and so everything becomes less efficient. And that's just like the natural history. There's certainly things that you can do to try to prevent that and negate that, but that's what happens to all of us. And then in terms of bone, as you all know, there's, you know, we start to lose bone mass. Women actually start to lose bone mass starting in their early 30s, about 1% a year. And then men lose about almost a half of a percent a year starting at about the age of 50. So women are obviously the sort of the higher risk for sort of loss of bone loss and fragility fractures, and fractures, you know, with training, like stress fractures and things like that. And so those are sort of the things that we're fighting against as we get older. And what that kind of results in, as I kind of touched on, is, you know, loss of flexibility, loss of strength, and you know, basically loss of bone. And so those are the things that you kind of have to fight. And that's why you might be getting more injured and struggling to do things that maybe you were doing without issue, and just sort of blowing through workouts without recovery, without rest, without warm up, that now as you get older, you can't really do anymore. Mm-hmm. But the good news, as I said, is that there's ways that you can sort of negate that or reverse a little bit of that.
So I'm totally going to go off script. Shocker. So since you've just rolled that all off, I have, like, I'm assuming everyone's asking the same question I am, because I'm going to jump down to the next one. So what can we do?
Right. So
take collagen. Do you take,
the best thing there's, you know, you could go in and try to take the over-the-counter supplements, all that stuff. None of that really has any research behind it. It's all basically placebo, and I'm sure you've met people who swear by the stuff, you know, and that's great. There's certainly no harm to it. So you can, you know, if that's something that you want to do and you feel like it might help, definitely do it. But the bottom line is, it's all about, you know, exactly as you said, you have to respect your body. You have to understand what's happening in your body, and you have to do things to optimize what you can do with it. And basically the thing that you have to do, as you said, and everyone who's a runner, ever was a runner, is going to hate me for saying this, but you have to cross train. Mm-hmm. You have to do, you can't just run every day. You know, you can't do the same activity every day without recovery. You have to be smart. You have to, as I say, smarter.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've noticed being, you know, now 50, and you're right. I did exactly what I tell everyone every day not to do. And I would just hammer the miles day after day, never take a day off, because you just don't, and because you can push through it. And, you know, when I was 30, if somebody said, and I did some strength, but if somebody told me, you know, heaven forbid, buy a bike, which is such a joke now because I own 2 bikes, but it's, you know, it could have let me go a little bit further. And I think, you know, if you can keep going now, you know, do I dare say, you know, part of me is like, go for it, keep going. But I agree. I think it's the cross training, and I know everyone hates that, but it's like we talked the other day about just adding strength in, and people are like, "Wow, great! Now I have to start deadlifting 200 pounds." That's not strength, right? What were you talking? Just using your body weight or balance exercises.
It's all about, so, I mean, if you think about it, and you can kind of, and I've sort of, you know, and I'm kind of on, you know, the younger spectrum of that, but even I've sort of, you know, gone into that, you know, I would just run through everything and ignore anything. And, you know, and then you develop back pain and your hamstrings are tight and you get knee pain. And the thing is, all of that is connected. And a lot of it really comes from the core. And that's what we really neglect and ignore a lot. But that's the core is our sort of it's our core. I mean, that's, you know, it's our base. It's what provides stability to everything. And so if your back muscles are weak, you know, if your hamstrings are tight, it changes the way that your lumbar spine, your spine is aligned, the way that your pelvis is tilted, that puts undue stress on your knees. And so all of that, you know, and then you try to run, you know, 10 miles and then suddenly your knees hurt and then it takes you longer to recover because, you know, of where you know, just, you know, the older you are, the longer it takes for muscles and everything to recover. And then you sort of enter this vicious cycle, which, you know, then you kind of like, well, am I ever going to be able to do this again? And you know, and the answer is, yeah. I mean, you just have to sort of, you know, do your body the diligence it deserves, which is, it doesn't have to be powerlifting at the gym. I mean, you know, there's so many things available online that you could do, just core work. I mean, focusing on just body weight. I mean, just, you know, all you need is literally, you don't even need a mat, just do it on your carpet, you know, but you have to do it, you know, not necessarily every day, but it has to be a big part of your regimen. You have to, you know,
I think with most athletes, they think if, you know, if it doesn't hurt, or you're not sweating today, you know, or we didn't run X amount or bike X amount, depending on whatever your sport is, you didn't get a workout. And I didn't
get my heart rate up. I don't get the endorphins, so I didn't work out. Yeah.
And a lot of it's in your head, a lot of it's mental, and you just have to be, you're at the end, but once you get in that 40, you have to be okay with, you know, your workout was yoga. I shouldn't say that because yoga can be hard, but you know, maybe it was yoga, or maybe it was just going for a hike. I mean, that's your workout that day. And then, like you said, your muscles have relaxed, you know, they've healed. Then the next day you can hammer it.
And also you can, and you know, and part of the sort of, there's this, I mean, I think that for, you know, because, well, the thing is, okay, so you think about what is your goal, right? What is your long-term goal? Like, why are you working out, right? Are you pounding it out to stay in shape and stay fit? Yes, partly, but like, you know, and I can kind of talk a little bit about this later, but like recently, and my thing is I want to be fit and active, you know, and able-bodied long into my life, right? I don't want to, you know, turn out to be, you know, 65, 70 and I can't stand up from the floor because I don't have the strength or the stability in my core. And so, you know, and I want to be able to, you know, chase my grandkids and pick them up when I'm older. And so those are the things that you think about. And to do that kind of stuff, you have to maintain strength and you have to focus on flexibility. I mean, you know, my dad he can barely touch his knees. He's so you know, and that, I mean, that aside from predisposing you to injury, I mean, you know, you're almost like getting locked in, like you're in a single plane and that's all you can do. And it's great because, yeah, you can get on the elliptical and do the elliptical, or you can run for a little while because that's the plane that you work in. But everything out here, if you try to do, you know, if you suddenly have to grab something at the airport, or, you know, something's dropping, something's falling, you know, you can strain a muscle or tear something because the body's not used to moving that way, right? So it's not just staying healthy because you want to stay fit and look good, but it's also so that your body feels good and you can do the things that are important, you know, eventually will just be like daily life stuff later on down the road.
If you keep doing that cross training, it will, if you just stick with it, it will make whatever your sport is, your passion,
Yeah.
it makes it easier.
You'll be more
You will
efficient.
get stronger, more efficient. You'll be able to go a little bit longer.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you have good flexibility in your joints and you have good muscle around the joints and you know, everything's working properly and you're warmed up, you know, every time you got to warm up every time. Otherwise, you know, I have so many people that come into me and they're like, oh, I was going for a walk or I was going for a run or doing this or doing that. And I stepped suddenly and and they, hamstring injury. I mean, that's so common. It's because you have to, like I said, the muscles, the tendons aren't as springy as they used to be. So you need to take the time to warm up and stretch them up so they're ready for the activity. And if you do those things, you're not going to get injured. You're going to be able to continue to train and you're going to train it more efficiently.
Yeah. So, okay, getting back on script, sorry, I took us off. So since we're kind of on that, let's roll with, so what are some of the common injuries that people are coming in, whatever sport they're doing?
Right.
Once we get up into this age.
Yeah. So I think, like specific injury, I mean, there's sort of degenerative conditions, which I see a lot of that usually come to fruition with, people who, suddenly doing more or something or doing the same activity and they come in and you have a little bit of arthritis. So that's kind of a separate thing, right? But specific injuries, I think the most common things I see are tendinopathies. So things like tendinopathy means just inflammation or chronic and injury to or pathology to the tendon, which is again the structure that connects muscle to bone. So when your muscle fires, the tendon's what moves the bone, right? So tendinopathies like patellar tendonitis, so anterior knee pain or runner's knee, jumper's knee, that is probably the most common thing I see. And it's usually those people are usually runners, crazy tight hamstrings, crazy tight IT band, weak glutes, just because
everybody is shaking their head going,
all you do, you just want to get out there and pound out those miles. I know, it's the best feeling. It's like my therapy. I love it, but and I'm literally, as I'm talking to this, I'm like, okay, Urch, you need to really do what you're saying because you're going through this right now. But that, and then Achilles injuries are very common. Talking about sort of upper extremity stuff, hamstring, obviously, as we talked about, like hamstring tendon injuries. I know I have a lot of people that, not a lot, but a good amount of people will come in with like partial tears of their hamstring, up at in the butt area. And then, upper extremity stuff also probably less kind of relevant right now, but, rotator cuff injuries, tennis elbow, it's all that kind of that tendinopathy because of, X, Y, and Z, as we've talked about. So that's definitely the most common thing I see. Muscle strains are also very common. So calf strains, hamstring, low back. I mean, if your back goes out, it's because the muscles are, they strain because they, honestly, we're not biomechanically optimized, walking upright or, we're not built to walk upright, right? Like evolution's not been really good to us. So, but if you don't pay attention to the core and, as you said, everything gets tight and then you're not working on maintaining strength, you're going to lose that strength. And as and at the same time, the collagen in the cartilage in your spine is degenerating. And so, it's by definition more unstable because it kind of doesn't make sense because it's stiffer, but it's more prone to injury and less stable. And so the muscles have to work harder to support and stabilize. And if your muscles are weaker, you're going to blow out your back. It's going to happen. So again, strength, stability, flexibility is so important. And then the other thing that's less common, but certainly common in sort of the endurance athlete, is like stress fractures, right? There's fragility fractures, which is due to actual fracture because of osteoporosis, but stress fractures are sort of on that spectrum, so if you're still pounding out the same amount of mileage, but you're not, taking care of that part of it, whether you need to be on vitamin D or calcium. So that's the only time where obviously supplements are relevant. You can get, stress fractures in your feet, stress fractures in your tibia. And again, you see that in younger athletes who are restricting what they're eating, things like that. So, but those are all sort of the things that kind of are the most common that I see as it relates to injuries due to sort of, overuse in the older, meaning over the age of 40. patient population.
So on that note, if all this is happening to me, do I have to stop my activity? That's the next one. I just rolled in it.
Right. So I think, so the short answer is yes, right? So, well, yes, because if you're having pain, I mean, that's the other thing is we're getting to a point where, when you're 18, 20, if you get like an ache pain and you're without an actual injury, most likely if you just sort of, I mean, I don't know about you, but I would just ignore it and just be like, oh, it's going to go away.
Right.
And usually it would go away, right? It would go away. But, when you get older, even me, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but, I'm just approaching.
I told him how old I was.
You're lying. I don't remember that. But I'm approaching 40. And even with me, like, you can't just, if something's aching, like a lot of times you can't just, oh, I'm going to rest. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be able to do it. So you have to take the time to, rest and assess and see, is this a real injury? And have a little bit of a shorter fuse to sort of figure out, okay, what do I need to do to address this? And usually there's some sort of muscle imbalance. There's something that's causing this injury that you can address. But, but in the long run, unless you, I don't know, there's a permanent injury that's going to prevent you from doing what you love, which is not that common. Well, in the long run, usually it's, you just have to sort of, as we say, like incorporate other things, you have to modify, you have to start to train smarter to prevent this from happening. And, usually if you're coming to see me, that involves, physical therapy, which I think is a huge part of recovery from an injury that's, warrants a visit to my office.
Yeah. And I think on that, as far as do I have to stop, which coming from, athlete to athlete, it's hard to say, yes, you have to stop. But I do know that most of us, you have to know your body, and you have to know, you have to know the difference of, wow, this hurts. Maybe I should take a couple days off, or okay, I could, I need to work through. Is it an overuse? Can I just take a day off and go swimming and pick it back up? But none of us want to stop what we're doing, but you don't have to completely just sit on the couch and eat ice cream. You can try to do something else and let it heal, and then hopefully pick it back up.
And that's another point as you make, is the benefit of being sort of, continuing to practice your sport later into life is that you have all that experience. Like, when something doesn't feel right versus, okay, it's just a little, I overtrained a little bit. I'm just going to, take it easy and sort of ease back into it. I mean, a lot of times, that, and the most important thing is just to not to ignore it, not to sort of, put it in the back of your mind, be like, no, I need to get these miles in, like I'm training for this or whatever. I'm just going to address it later. That's the wrong thing. Like, it's there. So really, it's sort of, I always say it's short-term pain for long-term gain, because you do this, so don't ignore it.
Because there's a lot of people that come in and go, well, I did X playing volleyball, sprained my ankle, and I ignored it and kept going. And now they literally have a hard time just going for a walk.
Right. Yeah.
So there's those, and then there's, oh, I rode too hard yesterday, I'm a little sore.
Right.
It's kind of knowing that.
Right.
Okay, so should I jump to that? We have a question. Ready? Okay, so for older athletes who don't run, what weight-bearing exercises can they do to maintain the bone density?
Well, so bone dense, honestly, it depends on if you don't have access to the gym. Any kind of weight-bearing activity is good for the bones, right? You're talking about sort of, walking is really good, but if you want to do actual weight-bearing exercises, like I said, you could do air squats. You could do, push-ups, or if you want to, you can just get some light dumbbells and just do some very basic stuff, just to you don't have to sort of go and bench press and do power cleans and stuff. It's just, you can even just go and do whatever the machines are. Usually the most efficient, productive exercises are ones that combine muscle groups. So you're not just isolating one muscle. And those are, like I said, the most efficient. So, if you want to work out the lower muscles, a leg press, so laying on your on your back and then pressing up, that engages more than just the quads, right? So, so that's usually like free weights and sort of combined sort of squat up to a press kind of thing, things like that. But I mean, there's so many things online that you can, but any kind of real like weight bearing exercise where you're firing muscles and you're causing sort of the muscles to fire and move bone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes just like focusing and squeezing like your quad muscle, just doing like some sometimes that can even.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm brushing my teeth, I routinely stand on one leg and focus on keeping my pelvis stable, like even level.
And which is really hard to do.
For the whole time.
Yeah, if you have the electric tooth,
you gotta do it for
you're like 1 minute. Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. There you go. We solved everyone's problems right there. They're going to go buy an electric toothbrush. Okay. So we're doing great. Let's keep rolling. We may have already hit on this a little bit, but you might want to go a little deeper. So the line between resting and healing on my own and actually going in and seeing someone. And my thing right away is we try to do everything ourselves, and you can't be afraid to ask questions, and you can't be afraid to go in and ask. And I think, I don't know who is all out there, but I think as women, we feel like we have to be tough, and something hurts and we're like, it's fine. So what is that line of, do we go hassle you and be like, something's wrong, or do we
always come hassle me? It's fine. That's what I'm here for. But to sort of answer it more seriously. First of all, it depends on, what is there an injury? So, if there's an injury and there's immediate loss of function, so, you can't move a joint, or you can't put weight on it because it doesn't feel stable, or it's really swollen, or if there's a deformity, something where something's suddenly it was working, then you had an injury, and then now you can't, it's not functioning. Usually that's an indication that you should probably get checked out. If it's just sort of like, I maybe trained a little bit hard, or sort of a progressive thing. I mean, usually if someone comes in like the day after, something like that, and the day after the pain started, so they're like, yesterday my pain started, there wasn't an injury, and now today it's really painful, or, then I usually say, well, give it, rest, ice, take, ibuprofen if you can, just do some gentle stretches, give it a week or two, if it's feeling better, and then you can start to do sort of introduce some activity and progressively sort of get back to what you were doing, and it doesn't flare up or it doesn't regress, like it doesn't get worse, then you're probably okay. If it's not getting better, it's getting worse, after about a week or two, then I say, just come on back in, so that's sort of a good rule of thumb at home. You say, okay, was there an injury? Can I still use my arm? Is it a little sore? Okay. If the answer is there was no injury, it's, no obvious injury, it's a little achy, but I can still move everything. It just hurts, here and there. Okay. I'm just going to take it easy. I'm going to, ice it, compress if it's relevant, and take some ibuprofen for a week or something. And then, if that doesn't, and then if you still can't get back to your activities, or if it's getting worse, then come on in, but honestly, there's never, for me, if there's a real injury, I'd rather see you, right? And if it's nothing, then I'll just say, oh, this is easy. Like, this is okay. You're fine. You're good. Go home. So it's if there's a question, you should always come in. Yeah. That's like a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. And a week or two is really not that long. So don't, we think, oh, I'll give it until tomorrow. It's like, give it a week or two to let it settle down, let your body heal.
That doesn't mean that you can't still do things, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's your knee, I mean, a lot of times sitting on a bike with low resistance then that's a very good general exercise for the knee. That's usually well tolerated, unless obviously it's a muscle injury like a hamstring or something, Okay. But even in case that's usually a good way to, passively or, very gently get the joint moving, get things moving, get the muscle moving. So there's still things you can do. it doesn't mean that you have to basically be laid up and be on the couch, you know, and if it starts to feel better, I'm going to go for a walk and see how it feels, you know, like just kind of feel it out, listen to your body.
Okay, so we do have some questions and we'll try to roll through them. If we don't get to them, we apologize. What is that collagen? Oh, so collagen peptides, beneficial for tendons in older adults? Question.
So I'm assuming you're talking about supplements.
I'm going to go with probably.
Yeah. So, you know, as I kind of mentioned, I don't think there's no data to support any of that, like taking all that stuff orally. Yeah. So I can't say yes, but there's no harm to it. So you can certainly, Colleen, you're in the dark.
It happens all the time. Apparently we're closed now. Just so everyone knows.
There's no proof that it'll help. There's no like science behind it, you know. But so it's essentially, you know, I always say take it if you want to. If it makes you feel better, it feels like it helps. There's no harm in it, but don't be disappointed if it doesn't help.
Okay. Okay. So should I go there? So another one here, just so just to clarify, if you could clear this up, is weightlifting with the legs considered cross training or not?
Yeah, so cross training is basically doing like different types of exercises. So instead of just running every day, you want to incorporate, you know, endurance, which is, you know, running. I mean, if you think about it, you want to do, there's, you know, for cross training, in my mind, there's sort of 4 components. And I kind of got this from another physician who is very interested in all this stuff. And he's got like some interesting podcasts and stuff, but it makes sense to me. You want to focus on like strength, right? So core stability. So, you know, lower extremity, like leg day is part of that, is part of strength. I mean, it's not just, you know, you want to incorporate shoulders, everything, it's all connected. You know, we're all one. It's not like your shoulder is separate from your leg. Everything's got, you know, it's all a chain reaction. So you want to do total body workout. Doesn't mean you have to, again, lift in the gym. A lot of it can be just upper body work. I mean, yoga is great. You know, holding plank, that's like a full body workout. So, and then there's flexibility. So making sure that you're stretching, whether it's stretching or yoga or something to keep your joints moving in all the directions that they're supposed to be moving in, making sure that your muscles are stretchy as they can be. And then there's like there's cardio, whatever. There's like endurance, which is sort of, you know, maintaining your aerobic capacity, being able to utilize oxygen efficiently. And then there's like the HIIT workouts, which are, you know, making sure that you can utilize anaerobic muscles, or, you know, sort of like the high intensity workouts. And that's sort of, you know, if you can incorporate all those 4 things, that's like the ultimate cross training regimen.
Okay, ready for this one? What? I'm curious about how to sustain. I'm taking might be affecting my muscles and joints. The Spain? Oh, so somebody is taking. She's crazy about the statin that she's taking. If it's affecting her muscles and joints.
Yeah. So this is. Yeah, so I was actually going to answer them. So the answer is statins can definitely cause myalgias. That's actually a very common side effect of it. And, you know, myalgia means muscle inflammation. And usually if that's happening to you, you should tell your primary doctor about it. And usually they stop you and take you over to something else, because it means that the muscle's breaking down. And obviously if your muscles are achy and pain, you know, breaking down, then not like, oh my gosh, your muscles are all going to melt, but it just means that it's having that, you're experiencing that adverse reaction. And certainly, you know, that can have a secondary effect on your joints. It doesn't usually directly impact joints. It impacts, but it can impact muscles in some people. So you should stop it and take a different type of medication.
Okay. So trail running seems to put less wear on my body than road running as I age. Is there actual research to back this up?
So I don't know if there's actual research, but it definitely, I mean, that's the answer is absolutely, because it's just when you're running dirt, it's just less, it's softer surface. So at each step, the earth absorbs more of the force as opposed to it bouncing back into your joint. That's the extent of physics. That's all I know. But road running, especially running on cement, I mean, that's so hard. I mean, I try to avoid running on all sidewalks just because of that, because it's completely unforgiving. And so every step you take, whatever force you put into that cement block, it's not gonna absorb any of it. It's just gonna go bounce right back up and go into your joint and really pound on your joints. So there's definitely, I mean, it's physics essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's anytime you can get a softer, but not super soft.
Right.
But if you can get on something a little, and a lot of times on trail or even a gravel road, your foot strike is a little different instead of that constant staying one step after another on that pavement, and that can help.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Take that away.
Running on sand, on the other hand, is very hard.
Oh, sand, horrible. Achilles, bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
Okay, lastly, maybe, can you talk a little bit about getting back into shape after 40? No, because you're not 40 yet. And why is it so much harder?
So I mean, that's a good question. And exactly the reason is because, after 40, I mean, after 30, the body's ability to tolerate exercise decreases. And so we do know that people, like I said, people that manage to train, consistently through their 20s, 30s, 40s are able to maintain a higher level of activity versus if you sort of dip down because of kids and life, and then after 40 you're starting to pick back up. It's much more difficult, not impossible, but it's just harder to get in. And so it's you have to be aware of that, and I think really implement these sort of start slow but consistent. That's the most important thing, and not give up and not sort of say, well, this isn't working, but incorporate cardio, strength, all that stuff that we've been talking about. But it is going to take longer. It
takes longer. And I think back to my original point is you have to be okay with being in shape when you're 20 and 30 or fit, or however you want to put it, is going to be just a little different outlook when you're 40, 45, 50, 60, but it's still moving. It's still good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, one thing that, and I kind of shout out my husband, it's not fair because he's not even listening, but he's with the kids. But, he always was really frustrated about his inability to sort of lift as heavy and do as much as he could when he was, in high school or college, training every day like crazy. And I'm just like, you can't compete with that. Finally, no. He injured himself, and that was when he was like, oh, so I can't do that. And that was, and so the idea is to sort of recognize that and say, you're not competing with yourself when you were 20, you're trying to optimize yourself as you are now. And that's not, I don't want that to sound as like, well, do what you can, but you're going to be a dud. No, you can be super. I mean, there's so many incredible people. I mean, look at Bend. I mean, Ben's ridiculous, so, but the most important thing is you just have to be smart about it. You just can't, like we talked about, can't just blow through and just do the same workout that you were doing when you're in your 20s, because it's just not sustainable.
Right. Okay. It's a long one. How preventable are reoccurrence of prior tendon injuries such as tennis elbow and Achilles tendon strains? I experienced these in my 40s, and now that I'm entering my 50s, I assume the risk for reoccurrence will increase. Overall, wondering how to factor for these in designing a training plan.
Right. So you're absolutely right. And, even if you'd never injured it in the past, you're still at increased risk just because of the fact that, as we talked about, as you get older, your tendons aren't as stretchy, they're not as pliable, they're more prone to injury. And so you definitely need to take it into consideration. And again, the most important thing is flexibility. So stretching, warming up before your workouts, keeping your joints mobile, don't let them get stiff. I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Great. Are you coming back on? Sure. Oh, yeah. I have a guest.
Hi, everybody. All right. So it looks like we've run out of questions. And so I think we're going to wrap up. We're glad that you were here. I know I can speak for FootZone and tell you that, of course, we have a great FootZone website, which has an immense events list on it. We also have a regularly updated Facebook page and Instagram page, so you can follow us there and find out more about other cool seminars that are coming up. And if you have any suggestions, I'm always happy to hear them. My email address is michelle@footzonebend.com.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's been awesome. Thanks for coming. Hope this was helpful. And we have more information on the center on our website, thecenteroregon.com. And also, I think we also have a Instagram page that you can follow that always posts about upcoming events and things like that. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
Okay.
Doc.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Doctor. Okay. Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.